Look closely at the roof of almost any modern neighborhood, and you'll see these dark, glassy rectangles quietly soaking up the sun. We know they make electricity, but how they actually do it is completely hidden from view. If you were to crack one open and look at the microscopic architecture inside, you wouldn't find miniature turbines or tiny batteries. You would find the exact same structural blueprint that powers the CPU inside your laptop. At its core, a solar panel is actually a giant light-sensitive diode, a strict one-way street for electricity. To understand why these completely different technologies share the same DNA, we have to rewind 150 years, long before anyone knew what a semiconductor was. The physical rules that govern today's renewable energy and digital landscapes were stumbled upon entirely by accident during the chaotic days of Victorian electrical experimentation. In the mid-1800s, electrical engineering was mostly governed by Ohm's law. Scientists treated electricity like water flowing through a pipe. If you pumped it in, it would flow equally well no matter which direction the pipe was facing. Then, in 1874, a German physicist named Carl Ferdinand Braun noticed a bizarre anomaly. He was pressing thin metal wires into chunks of a lead ore called galena, and the current stopped behaving the way it was supposed to. Braun found that the crystal was acting exactly like a stadium turnstile. Electricity passed through the rock freely when pushed in one direction, but if he tried to push it backward, the gate locked tight. This specific one-way valving action is known as rectification. With a simple rock and a wire, Braun had accidentally built the world's first semiconductor diode. Prior to this, controlling alternating and direct current required massive, clunky mechanical switches. Braun proved that you could manipulate and direct invisible streams of energy using nothing but a solid piece of rock. While Braun was teaching electricity to move in one direction, another group of scientists was trying to pull power straight out of thin light. In 1839, a 19-year-old named Alexandre Edmond Becquerel dropped 2 platinum electrodes into an electrolyte solution and watched the voltage jump when he exposed the setup to the sun. He had discovered the photovoltaic effect. But because his setup relied on messy vats of liquid chemicals, the resulting current was incredibly weak and entirely impractical for generating usable power. The solution arrived a few decades later when scientists like Willoughby Smith, William Grills Adams, and Richard Evans Day began experimenting with a solid element called selenium. They proved that selenium could convert light directly into an electric current without any moving parts or fluid baths. To understand how this works, you have to look at the physics. Sunlight is composed of physical projectiles called photons. When these photons strike a selenium lattice, they collide with electrons, kinetically knocking them completely out of their atomic orbits. This observation proved that light is a tangible carrier of kinetic energy. It possesses the physical force required to do mechanical work. In 1883, an American inventor named Charles Fritz took these isolated discoveries and coated a sheet of selenium with an ultra-thin layer of gold, building the very first solid-state solar panel. But Fritz faced a structural problem. Once the sunlight knocked the electrons loose, they had no track to follow. They wandered chaotically through the material in random directions and quickly fell back into empty atomic spaces, failing to generate a usable current. The only way to harness that energy is to introduce Braun's internal turnstile. By combining the light-sensitive material with a diode structure, what we now call a p-n junction, you create a rigid internal boundary. This junction locks the gate behind the ejected electrons. It forces them to travel out of the solar panel, through an external copper wire, and through your home's appliances, before they are allowed to return to their starting positions. A solar cell functions perfectly because the 2 distinct mechanisms work together. The sunlight provides the required energy kick, and the diode provides the required directional rules. Fritz's early gold and selenium panels were highly inefficient, wasting 99% of the energy they absorbed. At the time, the scientific community largely dismissed him as a fraud, assuming he was falsely claiming to pull energy out of thin air. Despite that heavy skepticism, those isolated Victorian experiments had successfully mapped out 3 vital blueprints for the future. They proved that certain semiconductors could be controlled, that light carried kinetic force, and that we could build strict one-way valves for electricity. Today, we rely on giant arrays of these structures to feed our electrical grids, and we pack billions of microscopic ones onto the silicon chips that run every digital device you own. Every time you check your phone or see a solar farm catching the afternoon light, you are witnessing the physical realization of a 150-year-old Victorian dream.